We're going to talk a little bit about authority. This is something that the Lord had been discussing with me for a while now, in the position that we that we often take, not understanding in some portions the full scope of the extent of that authority. And I mentioned something to you the other day, and you laughed when I mentioned it, and it does tickle you a little bit because there's some truth behind it, and that is I had mentioned that if the one that we have conceived, the one that is written about as being our enemy, and I'm talking about the evil one, if at any point in time he turns toward God and submits himself toward God, would we know it? Would we be made aware of that? Because it's easy for us, and this is something that sons and daughters of God will eventually have to migrate away from. Because if you really understand the concept of having the authority or the charge that you're given, you will also understand that you should grow to the point that you can't blame him for everything.
This is true. This is
You
true.
have to take blame yourself.
Right. You have to own up to your own responsibility.
Exactly. I mean, he may be there to tempt you,
Right.
but there's no temptation so great that you cannot stand up under it, the Word of God tells you. You see? So when do we start actually taking the blame for ourselves? When do we acknowledge that the action that I've just done is evil? I can't say that, well, he made me do it.
Right.
No, we made that choice to do it.
Well, I think we had spoke in an earlier discussion. We had talked about having a close relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
I think the more you grow closer to Him, the more He's able to nudge you, even at the slightest offense, to tell
True.
you that you need to correct yourself or you're
True.
wrong.
Right.
You don't want to get to the point, as we had spoke about before, where He's got to beat you down to the ground. You want Him to just be able to reach out and nudge you and say, okay, now you need to pay attention to what you're doing and make sure you're making the right choices. That's what you want. That's where you want to be. You want to be in a position that you can hear Him talking to you, so that it's almost like that picture of the cartoon they used to have where the enemy would sit on one side and
Right. Angel on the other.
angel on the other
Right.
side, and one saying one thing and the other is saying something
Right.
totally contradictory
Right.
to. It's just like that. I mean, and it's funny that I would think about that, because actually that's really how it actually
That's
should
strong
be.
similarities.
Right,
Yes.
that's real. That's a
Sure.
real strong similarity.
Mhm.
So I mean, but you want to make sure that the voice of God is so loud that He drowns out the voice of the enemy.
And see too, if you claim to have authority, you're not made subject to someone and have authority. It doesn't work that way. If you're made subject to something, that means that you don't have authority over it.
Right.
You see. So if you're saying he made me do it, or he's the reason as to why I did it, then in truth you don't have authority over him.
Right.
Because you're subject to him. And it can be the simplest things. I know the process is a hard one. I mean, well, it can be a lengthy one sometimes, but you have to understand this is the direction that the Father's taking us. And He tells us that the enemy is the father of lies, and naturally that makes our Father the Father of truth. And if we are His children and He's the Father of truth, then you know what? We always speak the truth. We never choose the lie over the truth, because if you're doing that, then God's not your Father, or you haven't chose to make Him your Father. That's the aspect of authority again. You're subject when in truth you should have authority. So it's you can easily pick it out of yourself, and it can expose to you that there is a lot of room within you for growth.
Right. Based
That's
on the
simplest
decisions.
thing. Sure.
Based on the decisions that
Sure.
you make.
Because generally, when it comes to a person telling a lie, they generally feel like they're in a corner when it happens.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I'm not saying there's some people that just blatantly lie because they've made that part of their nature.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying for the one that's trying to resist telling a lie,
Okay.
it's generally the corner that he feels as though he's standing in.
Right.
And it's easier to accept. It's easier for him to say that the lie is my way out and not the truth.
Mm-hmm.
You see, when in fact it's the truth that sets us free. So there's little things. I mean, and I don't want to feel like I'm nitpicking or being minute about things, but I can tell you personally, I can testify to you myself as far as, and I probably would have never thought I would have got here, to be honest with you. But as far as where the Lord has me, I won't even take a paper clip from work.
Right.
I won't do it. Because, you know, when the Lord teaches you something, you really don't know what you've been taught until you're actually able to put it into practice in your daily life. When you're able to do that, it testifies to yourself that you have been taught something because you're working it. And I've come to the realization that I didn't buy that paper clip.
Right. It wasn't.
The company that I work for, they bought it. It's not my right to take, because and I'm, like I said, I'm taking it down to a very fine level here, but you have to understand where the Lord is raising you up to, the standard. The image and likeness of God here is what it's all about. And he's not going to take a paper clip that don't belong to him. He's not going to preach to me something that he himself does not practice. Mm-hmm. Everything that he tells us, if he tells me don't spare the rod on your child, it's because he don't spare the rod on me.